John Nicholas, so welcome to the Post-Pandemic Pivot Summit. So great to have us with us today.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. And when I heard your strategic timing and your whole vision, I was immediately struck. This is fantastic, perfect timing, and everyone needs some help.
That's absolutely right. Well, let me make a little introduction about you for those who are just becoming familiar with you for the first time. So, John Nicholas, you're an Ivy League scholar, a former pro football player, a pastor, an author of the #1 bestseller book, Debt-Free ASAP, and an entrepreneur that has built multi-million award-winning companies. But you have also been jobless, broke, and buried in debt. Clearly, you have learned how to recover. And since this pandemic, you had been on a mission to provide with people better and new ways to deal with that. So welcome to the Post-Pandemic Pivot Summit. So great to have you with us.
Thank you, Claudia. It's such a nice introduction there. Thank you for that. And I just want to say hello to everybody watching, and let's do this. Let's do it together.
Excellent. Well, I have a ton of questions for you. Well, I guess we can start by you telling us a little bit more about how you became an expert in debt and why it's such an important topic for us to talk about today.
Well, I can tell you, I came to be a debt expert painfully and not voluntarily, okay? This is not something that a child raises their hand and says, I want to be a debt expert when I grow up, you know? That doesn't happen. As a lifelong entrepreneur, I've dealt with investor capital, and I've done out of my own pocket. And in the process, you learn a lot about debt just because it tends to come along with the entrepreneurial experience. But in my case, after 9/11, I was co-founder of a multi-million-dollar award-winning sports media company. And after 9/11, things froze up. We had just sold the company to a public firm, and they had high expectations. We couldn't meet them, and I got cut. So I was thrown down out of the sky into a real tough place of recovery. And so I learned a heck of a lot through that experience. Later, we built a very successful real estate firm, #1 in Texas, #2 in the US, with a lot of different ways of dealing with properties and loans and all kinds of things that are related. And you learn a lot about those things, which helps. And then finally, I did work briefly inside the debt relief industry, and I learned, boy, the sales tactics are not good. There's no real honest consultation. The options are just like whatever they're selling. That's the option you're offered. So I was inspired suddenly and without expectation to really come back. I had left that field, by the way, and I came back to that with just a very simple but very powerful approach. And so that became the basis of Debt-Free ASAP, the book. And it just is part of a mission, like you said, to make sure everyone understands the basic path to recovery and prosperity. And this can help us as entrepreneurs as well, because when we look at the basics, you're going to see that, wow, that applies to me building a business as well. So that's exciting stuff. As for why it's important, I just read a note that we hit an all-time high in household debt in Q2 or second quarter of this year. Obviously, everybody's dealing with debt. It used to be, hey, you got death and taxes to worry about. Well, for us, it's debt and taxes, right? I mean, that's kind of how it is today. Heck, even a recent Supreme Court justice said, it was reported that he had over $100,000 worth of credit card debt. Now, obviously, with higher income, you can handle more debt, but it's across the board. Everybody's dealing with it. And here's the thing for entrepreneurs is, yes, it's a special challenge oftentimes because of the way we bootstrap our businesses sometimes. But it's also, there's there's an entrepreneurial advantage that I want to talk about so that we can make the very best out of building our businesses, avoiding bad debt, and really navigating things well.
You have our full attention. But before we jump into that piece, I wonder, I mean, given your and really in-depth journey, what were some of the themes that you discover through this process of learning about that?
Simple three keys are this. We have to assess our situation properly. We have to review our options and understand what options exist. We also need to create a simple plan to recover with whatever support we need to succeed. So it's really assess your situation, review your options, and create a plan. And that's part of it. The other thing I've recognized, the difference between good debt and bad.
Mhm.
So we can talk a little bit about that if you like.
Yes, absolutely. So let's start from what you just said. Let's start with how do we start? What do you mean by assessing our situation and creating a plan? Like, how do we do that? Because as you're pointing out, as entrepreneurs, we are often the primary center of that.
Believe me, I know whether large businesses or small ones, managing debt is usually a significant part. Many people have no real clarity about where they stand just because life comes at us. We're so overwhelmed, or we're busy, or we're just wheeling and dealing. To slow down long enough to assess our situation breaks down into 4 simple reports. Okay, and I'm going to give you free access to have forms so you can do
Oh,
this.
thank you. Mhm.
The idea is you got to know your debt load. Some people know it to the penny, but most Americans, and I've talked with well over 1,000, most are just guessing. So, I think I have about $10,000 worth of debt. Turns out they have 27,000 once you break it all down and everything else. I've had people think they had like 90,000 that had almost 170,000. This is I share a story where I'm in this conference call and husband and wife are going, oh man, I got more than you, or no, you have more than I do. Anyway, after breaking it all down, we discover things. So debt load, number 1, accounts, balances, monthly interest rates, clear, good. Next is your net worth. What you own versus what you owe, get you a net worth, whether it's positive, negative, or 0. It's good. It's a good assessment. Thirdly is profit and loss, your P&L statement. What's coming in, what's going out, getting visibility. I'm not an accountant, by the way. I'm not a numbers guy. I'm a creative. I've always built businesses and usually had financial partners or accountants or other people managing these things. But once you deal with enough stuff yourself, or you're brokering deals, or you get to know things more, you realize you got to have clarity on your numbers. So debt load, net worth, P&L, income and expense report is what it's also called. Whether you're building a business or getting a handle on your debt, those 3 reports are critical. And I have forms. When we get to the end, we'll tell people how to get them, tell you all how to have these in PDF form. You can print them out or use Excel. Either way, whatever's best for you. The 4th report, of course, is your FICO score, your credit score. And there's a lot we can say about that, but I'll summarize this way. Don't be late with your payments. Don't close accounts after you pay them down. And what else? Those are the big ones right there. And we can talk a lot more in depth about that, but let's not right now. So those are the major keys. And as for good debt and bad debt, you want to hear the difference?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, what would you guess? What would you guess the difference is between good debt and bad?
Well, I imagine that a good debt is something that is helping me build further um, sustainability in somehow.
Right.
Bad debt is just eating away my assets.
That's right. And in simple forms, uh, good debt would be low interest, right? With the ability to generate income, tax benefits, or asset appreciation over time. Homes, properties, things like that are of course, the obvious ones. Low interest, high opportunity. This is how wealthy people build their wealth. They leverage what they own to borrow and acquire other properties, businesses, whatever, and the beat goes on. Bad debt, obviously, higher interest, and you're not investing, you're spending. You know, it's that trip or that, uh, we spend on a lot of things. Some of them are unnecessary. And unfortunately, in our day and age, a lot of times it's just to survive. So you're spending super high interest debt on just keeping the wheels spinning. And those are the people that I've been helping the most, just because, that's where the greatest need is. And so uh, that's, avoid bad debt because, it keeps you on a hamster wheel forever in many cases and is just, it's pretty punishing along the way. But there are very common challenges that hit regular folks, whether it's retirement, job loss, illness, divorce, separation, student loans. And there's 7 that I talk about typically, but those things can happen. We all can deal with those things. Serious debt can happen to anyone, and that's something that I know and feel and appreciate when I'm dealing, with others that are struggling. So,
I
good
mean,
debt and bad debt.
and this is why this conversation is so timely, right? Because so many people have lost jobs and now they're by need or by choice, they're jumping into entrepreneurship and they may be already facing a high level of debt as they're trying to build a business. So getting advice from you in how to deal with this good and bad debt and how to even recognize it, because sometimes we don't even think about that in those 2 buckets that are so essential to create a debt-free life.
You're right. Recognition is a big part of it because, again, you hear the term like the fog of war,
Mhm.
but I think there's just a fog of life, especially when we're struggling. When somebody's sick or a child has some conditions that are very challenging, or you have to take care of grandma or mom, or things are happening at work or in your relationship. And I talk about debt. The 5 deadly effects of debt are your finances, of course. It drains your best dollars. Emotionally, it takes its toll because it's so depressing. Mentally, it kind of overtakes your thinking sometimes because you're just preoccupied. I know I would stay up in the wee hours just cultivating the list of debts and next payments and
Mhm.
thinking of how I might be able to, but
Mhm.
but it's just like mentally it can be horrible.
Mhm.
And then relationally it
Mhm.
affects us. Obviously it's a big part of divorce and separation, and
Mhm.
it can scar children for life because when they are around that stress and that pain that comes with debt, and oftentimes the anger and frustration that comes with it, it can be very damaging long term and really create future problems for children. And then lastly, there's a spiritual component because we're meant to be free and abundant, but it's written that the debtor is the slave to the lender. And we want to free ourselves to as much as possible, right?
It's absolutely right. And which is exactly the reason why people start a business, right? Because we are all
Yes.
seeking that freedom, that abundance, that ability to take care of our families. It's interesting that you speak a lot about the support that we need to succeed. Can you share more about what do you mean by what is that type of support that we need?
Well, you're a coach, right?
Yes.
Thank God for that, because our society has broken up over the years, and we don't have, that wise uncle at our side, or that sage aunt or grandmother who has expertise in our field.
Mhm.
We're separated in many cases. So we need, just as holistic people, human beings, we need support,
Mhm.
right? And we don't, as entrepreneurs especially, we don't always get the support we want from the ones we love.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's a challenge, right?
Mhm.
And or they just are not able to provide the kind of either expertise or emotional support or vision for the future. And so it's very challenging. So we as entrepreneurs need to find people that can help us navigate and be successful. And I've written about the 7 virtues of a coach.
Mhm.
And let me just share them real quick with you. One is the personal connection. Because in this day and age, it's hard to get anybody's attention for more than a minute, right?
That's true.
And it's usually very transactional. It's like,
Mhm.
buy the car, okay, we bonded, everyone felt good, and then you drove away, right?
Mhm.
So we need that personal connection.
Mhm.
Expertise goes without saying. Expertise. Your husband or wife, or your buddy or your best friend, they may not have the expertise you need to build your business. Okay. Discipline. Sometimes we lack certain disciplines that we need reinforcement, right?
Mhm.
Encouragement. The word encouragement comes from Greek words that break down in theos, meaning in God, in the spirit. It's like a spirit of enthusiasm. We all need that. Okay. Um, Encouragement is very hard to find these days. Why? Because most people are hard pressed, they're empty, and they're selfish. So they don't have anything left to give. It's too much for them to look and say, "Wow, I really admire what you're doing. That's awesome. You go, girl, or you go, guy. You can do this." Encouragement is very hard to find. A coach can give that. Finally, there's that fellowship of like being in the trenches with you. Not just telling you what to do, with you. And then there's a focused effort, usually with coaching, right? A
Mhm.
focused effort with a result, and the result is what we're after. Whether you're training for a marathon, building a business, whatever it is, a coach helps. And that's why I applaud what you're doing, and the other coaches joining us, today or through the summit. Let me give you a couple of examples in my case of working with a coach. I've always been kind of frugal in terms of not wanting to spend. I mean, I watch a lot of people's free content, but at a certain point you say, do I really need to invest in coaching myself? And I can be a know-it-all and think I've got everything covered and I can do it, but it helps to get expert help. 2 examples come to mind. One, I worked with a fellow named Derek Depker, who is excellent in the area of writing and marketing and so forth. And I invested to have some consultation about the title of my book. And I was kind of determined to go with Debt Sucks as a title, because I figured, hey, that can stop everybody in their tracks, and it's a theme that I weave into the book. But I also felt like Debt Free ASAP, was more positive and really speaks to the result. And so I wasn't sure, and I really needed to talk with somebody. So he really helped me get off the Debt Sucks wagon, and and he reviewed so many different possibilities and challenged me to think about various things, and then helped me come up with something that's critical, because he was asking the right questions So to the point where one of the things in my book is what we call the ASAP protocol,
Mm,
which is that 3-step process, right? And so that was priceless, and it didn't cost me a lot. The
mhm.
other example, real quick, was uh, I work with a publishing uh, advisor slash coach, and I am a publisher. I used to publish national magazines, and I've published books in the past, and yet it's been a worthwhile investment for me to work with somebody who, again, has connected, is in the trenches, understands, and has resources at the drop of a hat that would take me forever to just kind of source them. And I don't have the energy, the time or the energy to just track everything down. So sometimes you got to invest, but it's smart
Mhm,
money. It's
mhm.
it's good investment quality, effort. So that's all I got on that subject.
That's great. Yes, it's important to really recognize where you need help and find the right match for your specific situation. Yeah, I totally agree.
True.
Yeah, this is remarkable because you're hitting all the areas that we have the biggest need of right now, right? We need somebody to help us guide us through this process. And especially in this time, it has been a year and a half since we probably had that before, but this past year and a half has been just a heavier weight in our collective lives around the world to get out of this. So,
Yes.
John, how can somebody get help from you?
Well, I have a couple free videos. We have free assessment forms. We also have a free cheat sheet that outlines the 7 debt solutions that everyone should know, but most people don't.
Mhm.
Okay, that can be found at go to zoomdebtfree.com. Just zoomdebtfree.com takes you straight to a page on my website, which is Debt Free ASAP. Uh, you can get free forms to do the assessments. You'll also have the 7 debt recovery solutions that you should know
Great.
about. Um, and then, like I say, there's some free video content there that's fantastic. And then there's also an opportunity if anyone would like some personal consultation. I basically talk about free and affordable resources.
Mhm,
That's what we're about. I mean,
mhm.
I don't need to make a bunch of money here. I don't need to generate $150 million empire. As some people have on the topic of debt relief or debt recovery. Um, but we're genuinely motivated to see people set free and prosper. That's what it's about.
I'm gonna, so below this video, people will be able to find that link so they can access it right away. And there's also a link to your book if people want to find your book as well.
Awesome.
And that is super generous for you to share those resources with all of us that we could use it immediately. And furthermore, if we need assistance, it's great to know that we can get in touch with you.
Yeah. Well, if unless you're an accountant or just a real numbers crunching person, when you're building an enterprise, the same steps apply. Assess everything. Be clear about where things stand. Then get the full positive, negative, but then really look at that P&L.
Mhm.
Okay. Again, I'm not a math major here, but it helps when you're building a business, large or small. Got to have a clear picture of your numbers. So work on those forms. Take a little time, and they will last you forever. I guarantee it.
We cannot thank you enough for your contributions. You have already put us in a pathway to success just by sharing what you shared today. And further more when we reach to your website and get those forms to get our house in order. Thank you so
You're very
much.
generous yourself. Thank you for inviting me. Glad to be here with y'all. God bless you.